see that local aid is mentioned, as was stated by Selectman Delaney and referenced in our meeting, our telephone discussion with Lieutenant Governor Murray. So that is very much an issue that we are keeping on top of. There are some things that we've initiated, and I do want to report to the board to reduce the negative impacts on the fiscal 2009 budget, and there are some things that I think you will be interested in knowing what's going on. I've had meetings with the town treasurer, and I've asked that she immediately assess the risks associated with all town investments and perform a detailed review of each bank account to ensure that the town cash assets are either insured or they are in an account which is collateralized. The work is ongoing. The preliminary information that I've seen today is a substantial portion of the town's funds is not at risk, but there are some small accounts, as I understand, that we do need to shift and we do need to move. And the reason why we want to do this is in the event of an extreme action where there would be a bank failure, the town's funds would potentially be at risk. As you can see, the total amount that we have invested, and that includes our general fund, our enterprise funds, our special revenue funds, capital, grants, gifts, etc., is about $9.6 million. So it's not a small and an insignificant amount of money. And we divide that money up amongst a number of different financial institutions. So I will be reporting back to you and alerting you in terms of what actions we take to protect the town's assets. I've spoken with the town departments, the municipal departments, about suspending the capital improvement program that was approved at the recently completed October town meeting. As you will recall, there were borrowings of $1.2 million that were approved for various capital projects. It's my recommendation that no capital expenditures will be authorized until after the November election, when the fate of ballot question 1 will be known, and until the short and long-term interest rates have an opportunity to recover. There has been tremendous instability in that market, and it doesn't make sense to commit to funds, force the board to go ahead and issue bans, and we need to take that step proactively up front, because without this direction, the departments will embark on their capital projects. The request for borrowings will be presented to the board, and then you will have no other opportunity other than to go ahead and fund them. So we've taken that step as an interim action to make sure that we're not putting ourselves at risk by committing to long-term interest rates. And there was even a period of time, as you can recall, a few weeks ago, where there was no market. There was no one that was actually bidding on these things, and that's a very extreme situation. The third thing that we've done is I had a conference call last week with the town's fiscal advisor, and the fiscal advisor, we discussed the health of the municipal bond market. The fiscal advisor does support actions to delay the capital program, as I have discussed. As you know, both the short and long-term interest rates are not conducive to capital financing, and these are the reasons that have been reported in the media. Just to give you some perspective in terms of where North Reading stands in its most recent borrowing that we did September 15th, which was just before this whole thing really began to take on speed. The rate that we had received, long-term bonds we issued, general obligation bonds of $4 million. The rate that we received was 3.84%. That was an excellent rate. We also had a total of 5 bids. Those current bonds, if we were to go on the market today, would range between 5.5 and 6% for communities with an A1 bond rating. Short-term interest rates. The short-term interest rate that the board approved back on September 15th was 2.039, so just over 2%. And the current short-term interest rates range between 3.5 and 4%. So it's really reflective of volatility and reasons as to why we should step back and not spend money and risk that we end up paying a fortune in interest costs. I think I've already touched base with you on the next bullet, which has to do with the status of different accounts as of September 30th. And then the final thing that we've begun to do on the municipal departments is to identify the multitude of state and federal mandates that adversely affect the delivery of services in municipal departments. I've requested each department to provide me with a list of required expenditures to comply with state and federal requirements, and I will provide this list to the board at its next meeting, so you're fully aware of obstacles that may remain in the way for the town to efficiently run its operation. There are a number of mandates, as you know, that say we have to do things, we must do things. These are things that come down from all types of state and federal organizations. I think it's important for the board and the town to understand what those things are. And hopefully, as part of our dealings with our state senator and state representative, they can be alerted to potentially some need for flexibility in those areas in the months ahead with the way the economy is at this present time. So those are really the steps that we've taken. Don't know if there is any questions about it. Those are really where we stand as of today. And I should mention that on the capital improvement program, I did speak with the superintendent of schools, and he did agree that the borrowings for the school projects is prudent to hold off on those also.
I was talking to a member of the Hilliard Commission who said that bonding effort on there should be rescinded.
Yes.
Is that your understanding?
It is exactly my understanding, yes.
I went through the detailed line-by-line item of the governor's cuts, trying to sort out if there were any hidden cuts in there that would come back and impact us.
So I was just going to ask if we've done an analysis yet.
And, you know, there was something about the Quinn bill mentioned earlier. I couldn't find anything in there, or it's under some other nomenclature that, you know, I missed. I don't know. But have you looked at any of that?
No, we're still, that information is a bit tough to find in terms of what the specific impact would be on the town. Although, as Selectman Delaney pointed out in our conference call, the state is not adverse to not funding commitments, grant commitments that they may have in place, commitments that exist in writing. And my fear would be Chapter 90, if that's on the table, or any of our community policing grant programs. Those are certainly at risk, even though we may have a valid signed contract.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding was there's also an adverse impact on some special education reimbursements from the state, which we need to look at quickly too, about the school department in particular. But,
Right, I heard that mentioned, but I haven't heard any more about it. So.
Right, I heard it mentioned specifically, so I don't know. Get the details.
I went through each line, and there was no way of tying it back. I couldn't figure out how to tie it back to anything that we were getting. I think you're right, associated with the grants, that some of the grants that have been signed off may not be funded.
But, obviously, we need to find that out. The devil's in the details.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine that there isn't going to be some adverse impact on anticipated revenue in some of these programs that we won't see, which again is going to impact the bottom line here again in the current fiscal year. So, soon we find out, but soon we can deal with it.
Next.
If you'd allow me to proceed back to the beginning of my report, the budget packages for fiscal year 2010 were distributed to municipal departments. Just for timing perspective, we've already begun our process for 2010. As is pointed out in the revenue projections, we now need to get a handle on what our expenses will be. That process is initiated by requesting municipal departments to come forward with their budget proposals. In the past, departments have been directed to provide what's considered to be level services, and that may be increasing in staff, expenditures, or both. However, given the situation, the starting point that we have on the budget going forward is I've asked departments to submit a 3% reduction. So we're going to start with departments coming in and showing us what a 3% reduction looks like. We've also asked that they provide a very simple budget that provides only for salary and contractual wage increases, but there will be no increase in expenditures. There would be no additional programs. And more realistically, I think that this is really a moving target as we get further into our revenue projections. We may find that we may need to affect further reductions, and I think we're early enough in the budget process where that really can be filtered back down to the departments and have the departments formulate proposals that can be shared with the board at a later date in terms of how we get there. So that process is ongoing. timing-wise, department budget requests are due to the Finance Department on Friday, November 14th. And then we will begin about a 30-day budget review. The town administrator and finance director will do 30 days of budget review, and I will present to the board on December 15th preliminary budget recommendations. So that's the process that we follow.
And then we will do the department reviews for the schedule of the first Saturday in January, and
So we're still proceeding with our
thereafter.
calendar the way we always have, and it's something that we need to do. We need to stick to that. The other calendar issue is shown as bullet number 2 on my update, and that's the annual tax classification hearing. I received communication from the assessors about scheduling the fiscal 2009 tax classification hearing, and they have asked that the board would respectfully consider November 17th, which is within your regular meeting cycle. The hearing is necessary prior to setting the 2009 tax rate. It's really the first step in the tax rate setting process. The next piece would be that it has to be, all of the financial information needs to be submitted to the Department of Revenue, who then approves the town's tax rate. And the deadline that we operate under is to issue the third quarter tax bills no later than the end of December. And that ensures that we continue our cash flow. We receive payment on February 1st, and that deadline is very important that we try to meet that. So this all kind of works back to requesting the tax classification hearing on the 17th. And then I would just ask at the end of the meeting an opportunity for executive session for litigation or collective bargaining strategy.
Thank you, Fred. Steve?
Just on the preliminary budgets that you've asked for 3% reduction, I don't know if that's enough for us to look at it, even from an initial standpoint. And, even the state's looking at 7%. So maybe we should ask the department heads again to put something together that reflects something that may be closer to what would be reality. Even to get through the current fiscal year, we're talking about reductions in excess of 3%. So it's, I don't know, and again, off of what? Off of the current budgets, which we're looking to cut. They're probably cut anyway. You know, so I think we're, and again, 3% isn't a good, the reduction isn't a good thing to be looking at, but my guess is we're going to have to look at something a little bit more steep. And you might want to consider asking them to do something in line with the 7 to 10% range. I don't know what your thoughts or feeling are, but.
Well, it probably has to be closer to 10 if we're going on a 3 off of what their budget was for FY09. And we're looking to make cuts in that, or some reductions in that now.
And that would give us a real flavor for what we're confronting, I think.
I think that there's one other thing that I was going to suggest. My understanding is the GIC now is open till December 1st.
Yes, that window has reopened.
And I would think that since there's a big chunk of money there, that we're absolutely going to need to even get close to maintaining some services and balancing the budget, that we schedule a meeting with that group and that members of the board be present and do it post haste.
Absolutely.
And you know, since it's difficult to get all these groups to agree on a date, let's post a date and say this is when the meeting's going to be, period. Can we do that?
I've already started that process. I think I'll get a couple dates back, and I'll share those with you. And we've already got the request in the pipeline as we speak right now.
I'd suggest that we try to work out so that the chair and the vice chair can attend the meeting, and if the vice chair finds it difficulty, then he can delegate it to one other member.
Greg, when do you expect to hear a response from all the particular?
I just got a request out today. It would preliminarily, I asked them to offer some dates for next week.
The timeline is obviously relatively short to get it in place.
Right,
so.
and that's why I've asked them to, I said available, typically what this committee does, it meets at 4 p.m. so we can accommodate